Hi, this is Matthew Robert Payne. This is like a guest interview. We're going back to interviewing saints in heaven. Um, the Queen has been in heaven for a few years since she died, and I've talked to her. If you have watched the videos, Conversations with the Saints, uh, on a playlist called Conversations at the Dinner Table. Uh, the Queen is normally at that dinner table, and we've talked to her from time to time. Today, we're doing an interview with Queen Elizabeth in heaven, and we've written 21 questions. As we go through the 21 questions, Tulu may have another question, so it may be more than 21 questions. This video may be in a number of parts depending on how awake I am or how tired I am. Um, when I write a book or when I do a book, I don't make the book longer than I think. So each question, one question may be a 10-minute answer, one question may be a 5-minute answer, one question may be a half an hour answer, depending on what the Queen wants to say. So I hope you enjoy this. If you don't believe that the Queen could speak through me, how we're going to happen is Tulu's going to ask the question and listen to what the Queen says, and the Queen is going to speak through me. When we're finished each question, Tulu may decide to ask a follow-up question, or we'll go to the second question. If you want to follow on in YouTube, in the description tag underneath this video, it'll be a list of the 21 questions. So you can have a look at each of the questions on YouTube and be following along in the description tag. So God bless you. Try and imagine this is the Queen speaking, and I hope you can watch right to the end. So we'll start with the first question.
Thank you, Matthew, and welcome, Queen. I never knew we'll be speaking to you today. There's always surprises that heaven has got for us, which is always different from what we intend to do. But it's a good surprise. At the same time, I am nervous to speak to you. So I'm glad we've got a set of questions because I won't want this to be a free conversation. So thank you, Queen. And my first question is, how are you feeling today? Did you know that this interview was going to happen?
I told Matthew, gave Matthew the idea to do this interview when he was making his coffee. He was going to do an interview with Jesus on the commandments of Jesus, and the Holy Spirit basically told him that he was going to do an interview with me. So whatever his coffee lasts and whatever he's feeling awake, he'll answer as many questions as he can, and this may be part 1, part 2, part 3, depending on how long his answers are. So I knew about this interview for weeks, but Matthew only found out 10 minutes ago.
Wow, it's always so interesting the way heaven knows the future, but we only know when it's happening. So my first question to you today, Queen, is were you surprised when you arrived in heaven?
It was a shock to me. Many people have conspiracy theories that I'm part of the Illuminati and I'm part of the elite, and that I'm actually in hell right now. And Matthew heard a story from an evangelist that was in his country preaching one time, and he was preaching on the streets with a megaphone, and Matthew approached him and started a conversation with him and went out for coffee with him a couple of times. And he told a story about how he was put in the top 100 influencers in London, put on a list. And he used to preach on the main street of London, and he was recognised as one of the top 100 people influencing England. And he told how he got an invitation to come and meet me, and he turned down the invitation, and then he was told you don't turn down an invitation from the Queen. So he came in to see me, and I got through the pleasantries, and then I asked him, um, Jesus said, I said to him, Jesus said that rich people don't make it to heaven. It's hard for a rich man to make it to heaven. Do you think that I've got too much wealth, or do I need to give away more of my wealth to charity because I want to make it to heaven? And he told me something I was meant to do. Put his hand on my arm. He asked if he could touch me. Put his arm on my arm and said, uh, do this and you'll make it to heaven. And I don't want to mention it because it'd be embarrassing to people, but Toulouse heard that before. But I said, yeah, that's my intention to do that. And I was reassured that I don't have to spend more of my wealth to make it to heaven. But I grew up in church, and I had a good relationship with God, and I had a strong faith throughout all my role as a queen, and so I was pretty confident I was going to heaven. But when I got to heaven, I was quite surprised because it's an amazing place, and you just can't compare heaven to earth. Heaven is very much like earth. It looks like earth, but it's just so much more glorious.
Oh, thank you, Queen. I don't want to use the word surprise, that I'm surprised that you are in heaven, but you being in heaven has really helped me to understand the Father better, because for so long, I never saw royalty, queen or king on earth as the same thing as what can allow you into heaven, because I always think that when you are a king or queen, you're serving the world in a way. But looking at it, you are serving God as well through the process of being a queen while you are here, and you had the opportunity to be able to do it for a long time. And being in power as well, you have opportunities to probably do whatever you wanted, but you followed strictly serving God and honoring the crown, which is you're honoring God in a way. So I've come to that understanding now. And I'm glad that you are in heaven. I know this is not the first time myself and Matthew, we've spoken to you in the dinner conversation. And I've been able to see that you're such a lovely person, because when you look at you from the lens of your duty, I see something different. But whoever knows you behind the closed door, they know you in an intimate way. So my next question is, who was there to welcome you to heaven?
So I had some favorites. When you get to heaven, it's the same for everyone. You meet relatives in heaven, and they sort of welcome you in heaven. But everyone in heaven has a welcome party, and the celebration is done in your mansion or in someone else's mansion, and you have your relatives that you know and people that you know that have passed on meet with you, and then you start to meet with your favorite saints, your favorite biblical characters. So I had a lot of respect for Billy Graham, and I met Billy Graham. I liked the prophet Isaiah, and Isaiah was there to meet with me. I respected King David, and as a queen, I respected like King David as a king. And you'd be surprised that Solomon was in heaven, and I I had to sit down with King Solomon. And when you meet these people in heaven in your welcoming party can go on for days, and people are just in a line to talk to you, and then you sit down with them and talk to them for half an hour or 2 hours. depending on how many questions you got and how long you want the conversation to go. So my welcoming party went for close to a week in heaven time, and Matthew has calculated that one Earth day is 21 heaven days. So in Earth time, it was almost a week. It was 5 days. So it's like a third of a day. So I will have passed away, and 8 hours after I passed away on Earth, my welcoming party was finished. Then I had a couple of weeks off in heaven time to visit and travel around heaven. Then I started my job in heaven. But what's so interesting about your welcoming party is the saints are selected depending on who your favorite saints were that you read the letters of Paul in the Bible, and you always wanted to meet Paul, and you had questions for Paul, and I had questions for David, I had questions for Solomon, I had questions for Isaiah. On Earth, I was really well read. I read the Bible quite a number of times. I was a strong woman of faith. I was very private, so people didn't know that about me. But um, Jesus was there, the Father was there, the Holy Spirit was there in a body. So I was able to meet everyone of importance, and depending on the category of importance that they are to you, that's how much time was allotted to each person. So I never felt it was rushed. I spent half a day with Jesus, talking to Jesus, and he spent half a day with me. So over the course of 5 days, I talked and greeted and hugged and interviewed and was interviewed by saints in heaven. And it was a tremendous welcome. Made you feel it was. In my time on Earth, I went to many events, and I met a lot of famous people, and I went to galas and awards nights and concerts and stuff that were put on for me. And I met a lot of famous people, and my welcome to heaven was the best party that I've ever lived. It was the most enjoyable, and I didn't meet one person in that 5 days that I wasn't thrilled to meet. And as a queen, everyone looked up to you. Everyone was so pleased and so amazed to meet you. As a queen, you don't really get to meet a lot of people that are your heroes. Like I met Michael Jackson, and I met the Beatles, and I met certain musicians that I really admired. But once again, they're really looking up to you. They're seeing you. I didn't meet many people on Earth that I revered, and they didn't revere me back. So it was really good to be in an environment where I not only talk to my relatives and my friends, but I was able to sit down with people that I really admired and ask them lots of questions. With Isaiah, I just went through my favorite chapters of Isaiah and asked him, what does this mean? Does this mean this? And does this mean this? And we sort of did like a couple of hour Bible study, just going through, and he's explaining what everything means. So it was a tremendous welcome, and depending on who you are, depending on what you do on Earth, depending on how many people you know, how many people are your biblical heroes, depending on how much you achieve on Earth, how close you are to Jesus, this will all work towards how large and how long your welcoming party is. If you are a Hindu or a Muslim and you were saved by the grace of God, and you never grew up in the Christian faith, and you didn't know any saints in the Bible, You may have a couple of relatives in heaven, but your welcoming party might go for half a day. So it all depends on who you are.
Oh, Queen, that is really beautiful the way you've explained it to us. And it just makes me looking forward to that welcoming party in heaven. But I wanted to ask you, Queen, as you were enjoying the welcoming party, there was a lot of people mourning you here on earth. How were you able to resonate with what is happening on earth and what is happening in heaven?
It For the first 5 days, for the first 8 hours of heaven, while my welcoming party was, it was like Earth was blocked out from me. So it wasn't until I was finished my official welcome that I started to be able to see news reports of how the world was responding to my death.
Yeah. I think your death was fabulous. You went away in a glorious way, and the way you were celebrated was really beautiful. But it's good that that was blocked away from you, because that would have been a distraction as well in what is happening, and you trying to enjoy your welcoming party as well. So that's really beautiful to know. Matthew, I want you to have time as well to be able to give commentary into this as well. If you've got anything to say, let me know. Okay.
Yeah,
Did you wanted to say something?
no,
Okay, thank you. So I'll go to number 3 question, which is, oh, you've answered that. It was, how long did your welcoming celebration last? You've
yeah.
answered that, is it? Yeah.
So
So I'll
it
jump.
lasted for 5 days in heaven time, which is 21 days is one day. So 5 days is like a quarter. So it's about 6 hours in Earth time.
No, thank you, Queen. And how much time did you take to rest? I think you mentioned that as well before starting your walk in heaven.
So I took another 2 weeks off in heaven. So I got to heaven, say 6 o'clock in heaven times morning, and by 6 o'clock next morning I was at work. So I had one Earth day off from working, and it was 21 days of heaven time.
Oh, thank you, Queen. And what is your role in heaven now?
So now it's mentioned in the Bible, Queen of Heaven, it's mentioned in Jeremiah, but Queen of Heaven is a title for something like the Jezebel spirit, which is a really evil entity. But I'm essentially the Queen of Heaven now. Mary Magdalene had my role, and I open buildings and open ministries and open restaurants and open businesses of all sorts, and do official functions. And when Jesus speaks, or some of the saints speak, have a public convention, I arrange those functions. So all the major functions that happen in heaven are orchestrated by me and my team, and so it's just like I got promoted from being the Queen of England to the Queen of a whole world. Like heaven is like a world. It's got countries and states and cities, and in the city of heaven, the capital city of heaven, I have run all these official functions.
That's beautiful,
An
Queen. Did you?
interesting thing about heaven also is, if heaven, Matthew hasn't seen the various countries because he hasn't spent a lot of time in heaven, but if you imagine a country on the other side of heaven, um, you can just think you want to be in the capital city of another country, and you can appear there instantly. So you don't have to get on the plane and travel for a day. You can just appear instantly. So I could open buildings and do celebrations in other cities and other countries, and I'd just walk out of my house and straight into the official function. I'll just get my clothes on and just like teleport to the other place.
Oh, wow, that is so beautiful to know. Heaven just makes things much easier, Queen. Did you ever imagine you will acquire that role to be the Queen of Heaven?
No, that, there's a verse in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20 that says, and he can do exceedingly and abundantly more than we ask or can hope for. You can look up the proper verse, Tulu, and I'll put it in the book here. But according to the Spirit that works within us. Um, so getting the role of being the Queen of Heaven is exceedingly abundantly more than I could ever think. It's like my whole life, for 50, 60 years, I was prepared to do the role of Queen of Heaven, but I never thought I'd be promoted. I was sort of really happy I was in heaven. That was enough reward for me, but I never expected that Mary Magdalene, who is like the head of heaven, gave up her role for me to take her role.
Thank you, Queen. Did you think there was something you did that got you there? What differentiated you from other queen and kings that have gone ahead of you?
I just had a heart for God. Ever since I was a young girl, I loved Jesus, and I liked to walk, uh, practice my faith seriously. And because I was in the public eye and I was a private person, I didn't publicly share my faith too much. I used to share my belief in Christ in some of the messages I did at Christmas every year, but I wasn't overtly like an evangelist or a preacher, but I did have a strong faith, and I did do an excellent job as a queen. Is like if you're doing a 50 or 60, Matthew doesn't know how long I was queen, but if you're doing a job interview and part of your interview was that you'd successfully done that job for 60 years, heaven was a promotion. But it's like my whole life on earth was lived to prepare me for this role. And this role is a lot larger because it's not the Queen of England, it's the Queen of Heaven. And there's a lot of places in heaven. Heaven's really huge.
Oh, thank you, Queen. And what was your experience like when you met Jesus, and how will you describe him? So that's two questions in one.
So when I sat down with Jesus for 6 hours, I was just flabbergasted. He took his time. He waited for my whole family and for me to meet Isaiah and Solomon and Paul. And then he entered the room, and you could feel a shift in the room. And I looked across to where the shift came from. It's like a bubble of glory appeared in the room. I looked across, and it was Jesus. And he's just so good looking. He's so handsome. He's got so much power radiating off him. And Matthew's often asked a person, "Have you got questions for Jesus?" And people say, "Yeah, I've got plenty of questions for Jesus." And Matthew will say to them, "Well, what's one of your questions for Jesus? If he could answer your questions now, what questions have you got for him?" And people are dumbfounded. They don't have questions for Jesus. They think they do, but they don't. And so Jesus made it really easy for me because I was like stunned. I noticed a lot of people meeting me were floored and stunned, and you have to be really good at asking questions of people to get them to open up because they're so in shock and awe that they can't talk. And I was the same with Jesus. I was meeting the King of Kings, and here's my savior, but it's so overwhelming. He had such a strong presence. All you wanted to do was to bow over and get on the floor and worship him. And so he made it really easy for me, the same as what I'd done for people as I met him. He just spent 6 hours asking me questions about my life and what I expect to do and what I'd like to do, and which of the people did you meet that you really liked? Did you learn a lot of Paul? What did you and Isaiah talk about? And we, you know, I was with him for 6 hours, but it passed so fast. And he's really full of grace. He's full of love. He's so humble. He's got a sense of humor. He's so funny. I'm a person, I've got a sense of humor too, but I really appreciated his humor. About an hour into the time we spent together, I was really relaxed, and he'd ask a question and I'd ask a question. And so I'd say 40% of the questions came from me and 60% came from him. It was a real exchange of information. He told me that he'd meet up with me for 2 hours once a week and have a conversation. Jesus meets everyone in heaven for 2 hours a week, and he stretches time. So he may be with you for 2 hours worth of earth time, but it's like 1 second in heaven time. 2 hours worth of heaven time, but he stretches 1 second of heaven time into 2 hours. So he's able to meet everyone. He can bend time. So when you're with him, he's not with you for a second. He's with you for 2 hours. But for another, 150 people, he's met them at the same time, and he's actually with them. So he's like in 150 places at once, but it's really him with you. So it's really strange. Heaven works really differently. So the same thing happens with me when I greet people. The one thing that upset me on earth was people would come out to my functions to meet and greet me, and I only had half an hour that I could meet and greet people, and I'd only meet like 5% of the people that were there, and 95% of the people couldn't speak to me or talk to me. But because of heaven can shrink and expand time, I can spend the same hour, I can spend an hour in heaven meeting and greeting people, but 10,000 people can meet me and talk to me for 5 minutes. And they can get a selfie with me and have me record something on their phone. And I can, when I go out for half an hour to meet and greet, everyone meets me. So no matter how popular I am, people, I've really come to know people really well because I've met one person 100 times for 5 minutes, and you've got perfect memory in heaven too. You don't forget things. So every time you meet the person for 5 minutes, it's like two old friends meeting and catching up. And as you grow in relationship, the conversation gets larger and longer. So you ask them how they've been going and how's their sister going and how's their job doing, and you know details about their life, and you ask about that the second time. So Jesus does that and meets with everyone. If you ever wondered whether you'll go to heaven and whether you'll ever meet Jesus, he's got the time for everyone, and heaven works magically. People in concerts can do that too. Michael Jackson will sing to a stadium of 50,000 people, and he'll do a concert for 2 hours. Then he'll spend an hour meeting and greeting people, but in that hour, he meets the whole 50,000 people, and they all have a 5-minute conversation with him and get a photo with him. So heaven is really good for everyone with that ability to shrink and expand time. So Michael spends what is an hour of heaven time of his own time meeting people, but it's gone on for 2 weeks worth of time, So heaven is magical.
It's beautiful. Like the way you've explained, I could see we've got a lot of limitations here on Earth. There's no way you will be able to meet 10,000 people on Earth and be able to shrink the time. So you are doing what you would have loved to do on earth, which is to speak to people, reach them, ask them how they feel, why they've come to meet you. Just have proper relationship with people, not relationship or where you're just waving at them like that's what you do mostly when you were on earth, because there was no way you could meet everybody on earth. So
it
I
makes
want
it different. Like I'll go to a function and I may speak at the function for 20 minutes as the official speaker, and I may sit down and have a meal for an hour as part of the function. Well, that hour that I sit down and have a meal, I can meet 5,000 people outside in the same amount of time. So
mm,
heaven is beautiful, and Jesus is. Uh, if you're not a Christian, you just like the thief on the cross, just be a
mm,
good-hearted person. And like the
mm,
thief on the cross, just say to Jesus, remember me when I die. If you believe Jesus is the Son of God, if you believe Jesus died for your sins, uh, if you believe Jesus is in heaven and you want to go to heaven, if you're not religious and you don't want to go to church full of hypocrites and rude people, uh, you just say to Jesus, I believe in you, Jesus. Um, remember me when I die and help me in this life. And that's all you have to say, and you'll be in heaven.
thank you, the Queen. I just wondered, you said people, everyone has got to see Jesus or meet Jesus for 2 hours each week in heaven. So why are people still struggling to progress in heaven when you've got the opportunity to meet Jesus himself every week?
Jesus is a gentleman and he talks to you at your level. So
Mm,
if you're not interested in getting intimacy with him and growing closer to him and pursuing him with everything, if you're just happy with your job in heaven and you're happy doing, Jesus will talk to you about your job and talk to you about what books you've read this week, and so he'll either work to help you progress or he'll just meet you where you are and talk to you how you are. And if you I wasn't a person talking back and forth to Jesus on earth. I had a strong faith and I used to pray to Jesus, but I didn't have conversations with him. But Matthew knows from experience in his life that Jesus will always speak to you where you are. If you're stuck in a sin or stuck in a job, he'll talk to you about your job. He's not one to enforce himself or his ways on you. So people can meet with Jesus, just have a fun time talking to him every week and stay in the lowest level of heaven for 30 years or 100 or 1,000 years, depending on what they want to do. And Jesus can read your mind. So if you're a person who wants to progress from realm 1 in heaven to the highest realm 7, if he knows you want to progress, he'll help you work on that and help you through the stages. But if you're just overwhelmed with heaven, you get a good job in heaven and you're happy, Jesus will just leave you being happy.
that's beautiful. You said something will meet you where you are. And that's something that I've come to understand through these conversations with the Father as well, that there is nothing there's nothing forceful about having a relationship with God. God will be patient enough for you to get to that stage by time. But maybe a lot of times we are the impatient one and we're thinking that God requires so much from us. And it's just beautiful to see that Jesus can meet so many people on a weekly basis and still talking about what their concerns are, even though he's got a lot of things that he's battling with within himself as well. It could still be a loving, calm Jesus. That's so beautiful. My next question is, Queen, how did it feel? You've met Jesus and you've met the Father. How did it feel to meet the Father, and what is he like?
Well, the Father is just like he looks like Santa Claus. He's big and he's got a beard and he looks like Santa Claus. Just so you can get an image in your head. but he's so jolly. He's so happy. He's such a like a grandfather figure, right? Someone, it's your father's daddy, and if you know your daddy well, sitting on your grandfather's lap is like a wonderful thing. So God will have you sit on his lap, and you can sit beside him and talk to him, and um, he knows a lot about authority and ruling and reigning. And uh, like Jesus, when I first met him, he had a lot of questions for me, and told me what a wonderful job I'd done, and told me about the future of the earth and the future of heaven. And we talked about political things and talked about emotional things. He talked about my progress in heaven, and the job that I was going to have in heaven, and how I'd progress, and how heaven was going to grow, was going to go through a new growth spurt, and how I was going to manage that and help people. He's understanding, caring, and loving. As you get to know him, when you grow close to him, you find that he's very sad and very depressed with what's going on with the world, and frustrated with the Christian church, and frustrated with mankind. And I've seen him angry and upset, and Matthew and Tulu have been doing a 7-book series called God's Last Days Message to His Children. And 4 of those books are going to be out in a couple of days, and when this is recorded. And so we're seeing both sides of him. He's very loving, understanding, kind, gracious, empathetic, patient. So he's got this beautiful, loving side that most people have never seen. And then he's got a side where he's really sad, depressed, angry, frustrated. Most of heaven only see the good side. You've got to grow close to him to see the other negative side. And a lot of people are like that too. You don't know how upset or how lonely they are or depressed they are till you really get to know them well. So God doesn't express all those sad things to heaven, although heaven have been listening to his interviews, and they're starting to find that out now. But he's the best grandfather you could ever have. And I'm particularly closer to God than I am to Jesus. And I was surprised by that, but we've got a lot in common. That I ruled the Commonwealth for so many years, and God's a ruler at heart. And we've had a lot in common to speak about. And we've talked politics and talked leadership, and I've talked about the earth, and I've helped him with a couple of issues from time to time.
Oh, that's beautiful. You're absolutely right, Quinn. I did not know much about the Father before as well. And through this God conversation, I've been able to identify that God really suffers, because the impression we do have through religion is God is the Almighty God, and he does whatever he wants to do and is in charge. But when God says, I'm in control and I'm not in control, that really touches me deeply. That how can the creator of heaven and earth feel that he is in control and still not in control? And I guess, Queen, you will be able to resonate well with the Father on that statement, that sometimes when you are on heart as well, you feel you are in control, and sometimes you are not in control. You just allow the prime ministers to do whatever they want to do. So maybe you might understand what the Father is trying to say, that even though I am the creator, I can't force you to do what you don't want to do. You have to come to that understanding yourself and say, yes, I want to build an intimate relationship with you. And that really made me even to love the Father more. It draws me closer to him, seeing how humble he is, and is not wanting to have relationship just for his interest only, but most especially to draw you closer and to give you the love that you deserve or that you want as a woman being. So thank you, Queen. Maddie, have you got anything to say before I go to the next question?
No, it's fine.
Okay, so my next question is, Mary Magdalene previously had your role in heaven. What is she like as a person?
Mary is a female Jesus.
Oh.
She's a male, when a male's a very gentle and considerate man, he's called a gentleman. When a woman is a gentle woman, when she's a kind and considerate and gentle woman, she's a lady. A lady is a female gentleman, and Mary Magdalene is a lady. Sometimes when you're talking to Mary, it's like you're talking to Jesus. It's like she's a duplicate of Jesus. She's just Jesus in a female body. And sometimes I actually forget when I'm talking to her that I'm not talking to Jesus, because she comes out with the same phrases, the same words, the same mannerisms, the same parables, the same teachings, the same profound language that she uses, and um, she talks in mysteries and complex things and profound ideas, and she can just say one sentence and you'll be thinking about that sentence for a week. Like, she's so mystical, she's just profound, and she's more mystical than Jesus. Like, Jesus keeps his language pretty simple and pretty basic. He's a really gifted communicator, because Jesus is so used to talking to children that he keeps his language really low down and not really educated. But Mary speaks in mysteries and secrets, and so she's a very good mentor for me. And I took her job in heaven. She was being the Queen of Heaven, and then she went on to do another job, and she's become my mentor. And she sits on, Jesus sits on the right hand of the Father, and Mary sits on the left hand of the Father. That Jesus, God the Father, and Mary Magdalene sit on the three thrones, on the central podium. And Mary's got a lot of authority, and she's told me that I can sit on one of the thrones too, and so she's mentoring me into that position. She's delightful, caring, patient, gracious, extraordinarily beautiful, and she's got tremendous power and glory, and she her words are healing. Like, you can be in the midst of conversation and she can bring up a pain that you had on earth, or an insult that someone said to you on earth, and speak to that pain and speak to that memory and heal it. She's a really gifted healer. And I've been like in therapy with her, that just in the midst of a conversation, just out of nowhere, she'll speak about a pain or a hurt, and it'll be healed. And just like Matthew was preparing coffee, thinking that he was going to do one of the commandments of Jesus with you, and he's getting ready for the Zoom meeting. Just like that, out of the blue, I said that we were going to do an interview, and Matthew was fine, he was ready. Or just like that, out of the blue, Mary will bring up something in your past that is a memory that really hurts you, and she'll speak about it, and she'll glaze it over and heal it. And so you never know what's coming with her, but she's a really deep, mystical person, and you'd really have to be spiritually advanced to be able to speak at her level. But she can dumb it down, and she can speak in normal language, like she's done in the 3 books that Matthew's produced with interviews. They weren't particularly mystical or anything, but Jesus can be really mystical and profound too, and he can speak in mysteries and secrets too. But Jesus, different to Mary, is Jesus meets you at your level. You don't need two mystical people in your life. One is enough. So Jesus just tends to meet you where you're at. So if you're progressing in your intimacy with him or progressing in your intimacy with the Father, every week you see him, he's talking about the progress you made that week. Where Mary just speaks in mysteries. So if you haven't met Mary for a week, you're still thinking about a sentence she said the week before. Yeah, she's just beautiful. She's so gorgeous and she's so powerful, and there's no wonder why she rules heaven.
Oh, that's beautiful. Who would have thought that Mary Magdalene would be the closest person to Jesus? Well, it's just been beautiful to hear from dinner conversation and from the book that we wrote with Mary Magdalene. That was really deep, and I was really blessed by that book as well. So what is Mary Magdalene doing now?
Mary Magdalene is preparing for the outpouring of the Lord and the second coming. She's preparing heaven to prepare earth for the bride of Christ to be matured and ready for the second coming of the Lord. So she's working on the last 30 or 40 years of earth, preparing heaven to mentor earth. And she's very much involved in your interviews and inspiration for your interviews that you're doing. And she's very in tune with the Father and very in tune with Jesus. And she's actually learning a lot about God's heart in your interviews, which might be surprising, but she's very close to God. He's very happy that God is saying the answers that he's saying in your interviews in God's last days message to his children.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful to see the Father so vulnerable. And when you see the Father vulnerable in that way, it just makes you to be better as well, to know that you can go to him and tell him anything, and just opening up his heart and letting us know this is how I feel. Even though Emmanuel, for people that might not know, Emmanuel is my son in heaven, was saying in our last conversation, we can still go deeper. So I'm looking forward to how deeper is going together. The Father will continue to reveal mysteries to us. So thank you, Queen. Number 10 question is, what is your relationship like with June Payne, Matthew's mother?
Matthew's mother, Matthew has got a high position in heaven. Years ago, he heard heaven say that he's the darling of heaven, and he was quite surprised by that, because one of the terms for Jesus is the darling of heaven, and Matthew's been told a few years ago, so he's got used to it, that he's like a second appearance of Jesus on earth, and that he's got this great role in heaven. Is going to have a position like sitting on the throne with Mary Magdalene. And so Matthew's mother's got a great reward for spending all of her life preparing Matthew to be the person he is. And her house resembles like a meeting room of the most powerful. And she's got a cafe on a second floor that seats 50 people, and a lot of important people in heaven meet there. And she's got a dining room table that seats about 25 people, and she's got chefs in a kitchen. And so most nights we go to her place for dinner, and Jesus and the Father are there, and we have this conversation there and a meeting there. And so I've got an office in her house, and she works with me doing functions, and she's being mentored by me to take my position in heaven when I move on to help Mary Magdalene. So I really love her. Matthew, June only knew Matthew as her mentally ill son. She knew he was tremendously close to Jesus and tremendously spiritual, but some of the things that came out of Matthew's mouth, June thought were mental illness and visions of grandeur that bipolar people are meant to have. And a bipolar person will think that they're the savior of the world, or they're a new Jesus Christ. Or Matthew at one stage told his mother that he was a former angel, and he was born as a human, but he used to be an angel. And he come out with some weird things like that she put down to bipolar. She never really recognized he was powerful. And for years he said to her, when you get to heaven, you're going to be like one of the most popular people in heaven. And she used to laugh at him, thinking he was mad. And she got to heaven, and then people used to mob her and ask her questions about Matthew. And about a week after I died, Matthew was talking to his mother one day. She said, "Who are you?" And Matthew said, "Why?" He said, "The Queen of England came to meet me in my house. Who are you, Matthew?" And I said, I told you I'm someone popular." She said, "But she came to my house to meet with me because of you." And I said, "Yeah." And Matthew said, "Yeah, I know." And so she's really lovely, and she's gracious, and she's like a mother. Uh, my mother's in heaven, and I've got a tremendous relationship with her, and I always did have. But June is like a mother to me too, and she's really gracious. She's about the same age as me, but she did like something marvelous raising Matthew. And Matthew comes to heaven and has conversations with us at a dinner table called Conversations with Saints in Heaven as a playlist. Conversations at the Dinner Table is a playlist on Matthew's YouTube channel, which he's got about 25 conversations. And it's her dinner table, it's June's dinner table, that he meets with all these saints. And over the years, I got to know Matthew very well, and seen him conversing at the dinner table really well. So I get on really well with June, and she's a great person to work with, because she actually works and does major functions with me that sometimes I attend, sometimes she's doing her own function, I'm doing a different one. She's taking more responsibility as the time goes on.
Thank you, Queen. Matthew, do you still want us to continue, or?
No, we'll end part one here.
Okay, before you end part one, I'm going to ask the Queen this question to end part one, which is, how has heaven changed you?
So I was always really gracious with people. I had a lot of care and consideration for people. I was very patient and gracious with people. But heaven's just transformed me in my graciousness. I spend more time and ask better questions with the people in the line up outside of my functions. When I'm with people, I've got more time for them, and I'm more gracious. And I remember things like I never used to remember on Earth. There were people that met me a couple of times, and some real enthusiasts that used to come out wherever I was going to make an appearance, and they kept on liking meeting me. But I'd remember their face, but I wouldn't remember what we talked about. But what's amazing about heaven is I can remember every conversation, and the mind is just so different. And God has been preparing me to take on a greater role. And in my downtime, I can actually hear the prayers of people on earth, and can hear hundreds of people praying, and God's getting me to answer prayers and work on people's prayer requests. And so I've become more gracious, more loving, more patient, more considerate, more kind, uh, more understanding of my husband, Philip. Um, and yeah, I've just become more Christ-like. And the more I meet with Mary Magdalene, the more I'm being conformed into the image of Christ. I'm becoming more and more like Jesus myself. I actually hear myself talking sometimes, and I sound like Jesus. So I've really grown really fast. And because I'm like dry ground that's ready for rain. Like I'm a sponge soaking up all the water. I'm a sponge soaking up all the intimacy with Jesus. And it's my greatest desire to rule heaven. And and I never thought before I got there that I'd possibly do that. I thought I'd just go to one of the lowest places in heaven. I didn't have an extraordinary faith like the saints out of the Bible, or Mary Magdalene, or um, people don't know the history of Mary Magdalene. And Matthew's got 4 or 5 books that mention Mary Magdalene, and you can do some research into her, reading her books. But I'm becoming more and more like Mary, and I'm really coming to love myself.
Oh, that's beautiful. You're absolutely right, Queen. I can resonate with what you've just said about you were thinking you will be in one of the lowest realms. I do think I don't even know whether I was going to even enter heaven for so long, because I was so sure that I still have some things in my life that I need to get rid of. And you saying that heaven has made you so much gracious. I'm not in heaven yet, but speaking to the Father and the saints in Jesus is really, really working on my character. It's making me more nicer person and making me to think twice before I do things now, and loving people and more accepting. So thank you so much, Queen, for speaking to us. I think we're going to finish the part 1 now, and then we'll do the part 2 whenever Matthew is available.
Okay, so if you listen to this video and you liked it, please like. If you like this video and you want to comment, please comment. Look out for part 2 in the next couple of days. And if you like this channel and this is the first video you've seen, feel free to subscribe and listen to God's Last Days message to his children messages, or any other messages that go live on the channel as you see it. God bless you.